Roland Willits, OMS Stories. I'm here with Rich Bellert, and we're in his home. And he has an awesome home. I wish I could show you it all. He's got everything that reminds you of a well-lived life.
Thank you. Thank you, Roland.
And we're having fun. We sat, and as I normally do, we had several hours of talk, and now we're going to have 15 minutes of video.
Could turn out to be a couple of hours of video.
Well, might be.
Who knows where we go from here?
That's right. And you've traveled the world, haven't you?
Well, not really the world, but pretty much throughout the U.S. of A. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I've always found there's so much to see in this country that I've never had much desire to go overseas.
Well, you can pretty much see the rest of the world here too, because they bring it over. They set up like Paris, Texas.
Yes.
And you actually find some Paris stuff up there.
Or Russia, Ohio.
Right. And you got every country in the world is representative in some small town in America.
You betcha. New Germany, Minnesota.
Exactly.
And you being an old Minnesotan, you would have known that.
Yes, and they have lots and lots of Germans, and that's from my family heritage is German and French. So.
Well, my grandmother's side of the family was German. Her maiden name was Leichenschneider.
Leichenschneider. That's a nice name.
I would have been probably a little upset it had been my name, and I had to write my name 100 times on the blackboard.
That's true.
With that long name, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you'd have shortened that sucker.
You bet.
Yeah. They had everyone that came over from Germany shortened their names. It's like I was talking to Boxer Bob, and his father had a huge German name, and they shortened it to Selby. So.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I was born and raised in West Central Ohio. A lot of Germans living there. And I got transferred to Minnesota by the insurance company that I worked for back in 1977. And up in Stearns County, I found a real great similarity of names of people that were the same name back in Ohio, but they were spelled a little bit differently. And there's just no doubt in my mind that if you traced back their family tree far enough, those people would have been related.
Absolutely.
A place in northern Iowa the same way, where I had the opportunity to run and meet some people there that same family name, same family resemblance, but yet they didn't know each other, and I know they were related.
Yeah.
No question about it.
And in your journeys, you saw a lot of cowboys, didn't you?
Well, yes.
They drove tractors.
Yes.
During our time, they drove tractors, but they were pretty much cowboys.
But I would ride the old plow horses, when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I remember a time when it had rained and I was riding this old horse out in the field. It was a hay field, but, when you have that first furrow, when you plow a field, there's always a bit of a depression. There was water standing there. And we're running along. Suddenly the horse jumps that water. And I thought, man, this was really something. Turned the horse around. The horse decided that time not to jump it and stopped. And I went right over the top of the horse.
Well, you learn what control you have. What?
Riding bareback, no saddle.
No saddle, yep. You find out what the horse wants to do.
Yep. I still feel flying through the air, and I kind of somersaulted and landed right on my back. It was an experience.
Well, lately you've been doing cowboy poetry.
Yeah, I got started with cowboy poetry. A couple of friends of mine from the great state of Idaho. They were both entertainers here in the Rio Grande Valley. One was a yodeler. And boy, could he yodel. He had a 5-octave range voice.
Whoa.
And another guy by the name of Terry Raff, who sang only Western songs, but he told the story that went along with the song. He researched the song. knew about the writer, and he had a really very interesting show. And they were getting ready to go back to Idaho. It was the end of the season here. It was about the first week of March. My wife and I, Betty, had lunch with they and them and their wives. And Rod Erickson during lunch said, Rich, he said, you ought to do cowboy poetry. My first thought was, no, for goodness sakes, I couldn't do that. I didn't even know for sure what it was, but I had an idea because I could see them doing it. And Terry Raff spoke up and said, yeah, Rich, you could do it. You've got a good voice for it. You've got a good presence on the stage. You could do it. Nancy Erickson spoke up and said, well, Rich, I'll send you a poem. Well, she sent the poem, and I had it lying on my desk at home. By this time, I'm back in Minnesota, and hadn't done much with it. And I'm waiting on the telephone, talking to some internet company, trying to get a problem resolved. And you know, you sit there and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And while I'm waiting, I'm kind of reading the first two verses in that poem, and I say it aloud, and then I kind of shut my eyes, see how much I can remember. And that's how I really got started.
Wow.
And it was a poem. It's entitled Joe Rogers' Buckskin Bronco. It was written, I learned, by a black cowboy, an old timer out at Spirit Lake, Idaho, knew this guy. And he also recited cowboy poetry. He gave me the history on it. His name was Blackie Ketchum. And he migrated up into the Montana, Idaho area with the old cattle drives, where they used to bring longhorn cattle all the way from Texas, all the way up into Montana and the North Country. So he's the guy that wrote the poem. And can you imagine sitting around the campfire in those days? They didn't have fancy guitars to play. They might have had a Jew's harp or a French harp or a harmonica, or they certainly didn't have bass guitars and all of those fancy things we see today. And this is how they entertained each other, telling stories. As a matter of fact, they were called windies in those days. And that's probably where we have come from, where some people get the nickname of Windy. He's an old windy storyteller. Kind of an interesting little
it is.
little fact.
Yeah, interesting little fact.
Yeah.
Can you recite it?
Sure could.
Okay.
I do much better standing than I do sitting when I'm doing a poem, because I like to put a little action into it.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I've got some poems that kind of all over the stage with.
Well, you got from where you are over in front of me, so just enjoy the space.
Go beyond that, okay.
Well, you can, but you'll be reciting it off
I'll be in the background.
Yeah.
I'll be in the background. Well, sometimes you're better off in the background than you're in the foreground. You know? It's entitled Joe Rogers' Buckskin Bronco. If ever there was a critter who was full of fight and sin, Joe Rogers' Buckskin Bronco was a feller for your tin. He was little, he was wicked. We fed him with a stick. We took him out to water by just pulling in the creek. Now, Joe said, I'm mixed up. Can we start this over, Roland?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Something threw me off there.
No problem.
Well, you can edit that out.
No, I'm gonna. We're having fun with
Oh,
this.
you're gonna. Oh, for
you're on live.
Here we
you
go.
don't get a chance to do that on stage when you forget.
Television, no.
You know, yeah, live.
No,
This is live TV.
When it happens to
but you gotta get, this is OMS Stories. You're allowed space.
When I tell a story on stage and I get mixed up, I look at them and I say, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'm 85 years old. And what do you expect from an old feller?
That's right, an old man. Yeah,
there
exactly.
we go.
And so you did the same thing on thing, and it's just wonderful. That's part of our lives.
It's embarrassing.
I've never done one thing that I haven't made some small mistake, and most of them are big ones. So
yeah, I'm not used to performing in front of a camera.
Here you go. Isn't that cool?
Well, here we go again. If ever there was a critter who was full of fight and sin, Joe Rogers' Buckskin Bronco was a feller for your tin. He was little, he was wicked. We fed him with a stick. We took him out to water by just pulling in the creek. One day there came to Joe a rank tank discaloo, claimed himself a hero, said he hailed from Butte. He talked and he gassed and he rounded up a claimant on the side that he could ride anything from a Thunderbolt to an ordinary Bronco hide. So we started for the stables, and Joe must have dared him, I expect, because I heard him say, "I'll ride that Bronco or I'll break his cussed neck." So Joe got himself some rope and put himself on top of the shed, and we fooled with Mr. Bronco till we got it round his head. And we grabbed that rope and we pulled it till we yanked him all about. But we had to tear the shanty down just to get old Buckskin out. "Why not get right on him?" I heard Joe Rogers say. The wild and howling terror looked at Buckskin kind of wild. He started for old Buckskin, who was hunched up like a cat. He hadn't more'n reached him, and old Buckskin kicked him flat. "Where am I?" said the terror as he sat upright and swore. "You're in heaven," said Joe Rogers. "Would you want to work the job some more?" "Look out there, I'm a-comin'." And we held old Buckskin right till he pulled the double cinches of a greasy saddle tight. And then by pulling at his head with some experienced wit, we put on a horsehair bridle with a mighty wicked bit. "Look out there, I'm a-comin'," and he did it, yes you bet. That terror mounted old Buckskin like no feller ever yet. Now at first Mr. Buckskin tried to get the draft of things. Then he started bucking with them mighty short, stiff leg springs. Well, I hoped to dance a topa, but he turned a somerset and he flew off toward Montana, and I guess he's a-going yet. Now the terror, he split right off him and he fell without a groan. He didn't break that Bronco's neck, he broke his cussed own. Now there's a grave in Pony Gulch at the birdie sore o'er with these words written on a cross 2x4. "This is in remembrance of a rank tank discolute, claimed himself a hero, said he hailed from Butte." First poem that I ever memorized.
That is so good. I love it.
And it's an authentic old cowboy poem.
It's, yeah, wow.
Written way back when. That makes it kind of a classic.
It does.
It's
And
really a classic.
it's funny that it came down through the ages.
The gentleman that originally done the poem out there in Idaho is no longer with us, and I would imagine, Roland, that I'm probably the only person reciting cowboy poetry in this country today that recites that particular poem.
That does that poem. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting poem, and one that means a lot to me.
Yeah. And all your friends still come down and hear you?
Yeah. I am fortunate that way that I've got a
crowd.
good number of friends that will come out to see me if I'm doing a show. I work a lot with other entertainers. Red Johnson, I work with him quite a lot. David Church is another.
Right.
For the last 8 years that David, or maybe it's 9 years that David's been down here in the Rio Grande Valley during his season, I've emceed his shows, and I open the show with Cowboy Poetry.
Wow.
And then following intermission, open again, close out the program and so forth. So
that's nice.
A lot of fun. He's an RFD TV star, and you'll see him a lot on the Midwest Country Show.
Oh, okay.
One of the big events that I do, Roland, here in Mission, Texas, here in the Rio Grande Valley, I do it for the City of Mission and the Chamber of Commerce in Mission. Every year they have a big event called the Winter Texan Fiesta. It's a thank you to the winter Texans for spending their winters here. It isn't only people from Mission, but from the entire valley. People are welcome from everywhere. And we'll have 3,000 people come to that show.
Wow.
And it's every show promoter's dream is to be able to do a show and bring in 3,000 people.
Yep.
And we found the secret. The City of Mission, the Chamber of Commerce, buys everybody a barbecue sandwich that'll come if they get their ticket in advance.
Right.
And I'll tell you, Roland, winter Texans will get in a mile-long line if there's free food and free music. So,
Winter Texans, by the way, for those that don't know, are the ones that just spend the winter here. And they can come anywhere, mostly, the North States. You got the Dakotas and the Minnesotas and the Michigans and a few from Iowas, and the other way down Montana, and a lot from Canada.
And we have 3 couples from Alaska living here in this park at Aladdin Village in Michigan.
Wow,
Texas.
there you go. We got Alaskans.
Yeah, Alaskans come down.
So they come from all over the North Country, and they classify themselves Winter Texans.
Yeah. And Florida and Arizona will refer to them as snowbirds.
Right.
Here in South Texas, even President Bush, when he was governor of the state, would refer to the winter people as Winter Texans. Governor Abbott now doing the same thing.
Wow. Yeah.
And the business people all refer to the people who are here for the winter as Winter Texans, and that's a bit of respect that I think we all very much appreciate.
That is. I was once given the title of honorary Texan by a lady by the name of Ann Richards, and so I have never been a Winter Texan. I quickly. I own stuff here in Texas, but I travel so fast through here. Normally, like this, I'll be here a week. And I will be on my way into the family in Kentucky.
You may have to retract that a little bit, because when you're in Texas in the wintertime and another Winter Texan sees you and you look like a Winter Texan, they'll believe you're a Winter Texan.
So all I have to do is, like I do really pretend.
To show up.
All I have to do is pretend I'm a Texan Western. I'm a Winter Texan. Gentlemen and ladies, I'm a Winter Texan. One of the things that, my lady, Terry, and she is a Texan. She's born in Littlefield and raised in Abilene. And the one thing she, being a Minnesota Texan, or or Winter Texan, is she keeps teaching me, take off the hat before you kiss me.
Yeah, they do get in the way.
They do.
They do get in the way.
Yeah, so I haven't got that down yet. I keep working on that.
And for those of us with big noses, the hat and the nose, that's a real double problem.
Yes, it's like you gotta move the hat. You gotta remove the hat. So I work at it, and she normally goes and takes it off and kisses me,
but it's perfectly acceptable to go to a restaurant and leave your hat on while you're eating.
Yeah, in Texas it is.
Yes, it is.
And I do that, and
yeah,
I would go to church and not take off my hat, but then someone in the back can't see the preacher. But and even at shows, I always take off my hat because someone can't see the show.
Well, that's simply respect. But to a cowboy, one of the ways that you could offend him most was to dishonor his hat. There probably, throughout the annals and the history of the Old West, there may have been people killed over the fact that somebody destroyed somebody else's hat. That was pretty precious property to the guy that owned that.
Yes, I found that out. I have a great story sometime I'll tell you about Roland and his Texan. Okay, but it's another story and another time, and maybe I could create a cowboy poet out of it. I bet I could if I sat down and thought about it a little while.
And do you know that bartenders would accept a hat of a cowboy as security for drinks if the man run out of money?
I didn't know that.
Absolutely true.
That is so cool.
They would accept the hat as security because he knew he was coming back for that hat.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a cowboy or poet. We're going to take him. You're going to say one more poem, and minimum right now that you pick out in your of the whole repertoire. He's got about 30 of them there that he's got memorized. So grab, or think of one that just sort of bites the bit.
But I'd like to do one if 5 minutes isn't too long.
Cool.
This was written by Red Steagall. Red Steagall is up in the Fort Worth area. And he is a very famous cowboy poetry writer as well as a singer of Western songs. And I don't know if he's ever written any songs, but he has a radio program, and I've seen him on TV quite a little bit. And this poem, The Fence That Me and Shorty Built, is one that has a lot of meaning. I've been told that it's often used in colleges and classrooms for the story that it tells and the way it's put together. And I met Red Steagall one time in Iowa. That's before the Everhart Festival moved up to Lamar's. They were in another location.
Right.
And Red was there. I was on the show before him on the main stage reciting some cowboy poetry. And I think I maybe had 20 minutes or so before Red came on. And I knew he was following me. And I was kind of looking for him. And finally I saw him sitting out there in the audience. He had a beard and dressed up with his cowboy hat and costume. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, there he sits. And I started getting real nervous. I tuned him out. So as I exited the stage and he came on board, Everhart was bringing him up and introducing him. Steagall said to me, he said, young man, and that flattered me because I'm older than he. He said, I want to talk to you after the show. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? What did I say that maybe upset him or whatever? I just wasn't certain about whatever. So after his set, when he sold quite a few CDs, and Betty and I went over to talk with him, and I was so honored. He put his arm on my shoulder and he said, Rich, he said, I just want to tell you how good I think you are as a cowboy poetry reciter. And I said, Red, I appreciate that. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to recite your poem, The Fence That Me and Shorty Built, at an upcoming cowboy poetry rodeo that I'm going to be attending. And he said, you would honor me tremendously if you used my poem. And that poem did help me secure second place in the cowboy poetry reciter division. And I missed first place by just 2 points. So it was quite an experience. And poem goes a bit like this. Story of an older fellow working with a young fella. And, well, we'll go through the story. We picked up all the fencing tools and staples off the road. An extra roll of barbed wire was the last thing left to load. I drew a sleeve across my face to wipe away the dirt. The young man who was helping me was tucking in his shirt. I turned to him and said, this fence is finally done. 5 new strands of barbed wire shining proudly in the sun. The wire is running straight and tight with every post in line, the kind of job you're proud of, one that stands the test of time. Well, the kid was not impressed at all. He stared off into space, reminded me of years ago, another time and place. Well, I called myself a cowboy. I was full of buck and ball, thought my hands wouldn't fit post augers and maul. Well, they sent me out with Shorty and the ranch building crew. Well, I was quite insulted, and before the day was through, I let them know that I'm a cowboy. This ain't what I do. I ain't no dadgum nester. I hired out to buckaroo. We'll talk about that, son, when we get in tonight. Right now, you pick them augers up. It's either that or fight. Boy, I was digging post holes faster than a Georgia mole, and if a rock got in the way, well, I'd simply move the hole. So when the cowboy set the post, the line went in and out. Old Shorty's face got fiery red, and I could hear him shout, nobody but a fool would build a fence that isn't straight. I ain't got any use for someone who ain't a-pulling his own weight. Well, I thought for sure he'd hit me. Glad he didn't have a gun. I looked around to find a place that I could duck and run. But old Shorty walked up to me just as calm as he could be, said, son, I need to talk to you. Let's find ourselves a tree. Well, he rolled a Bull Durham cigarette as we sat upon the ground, took a puff or two, and slowly looked around. He said, son, I ain't had much schooling. I never got too far with that, but there's a lot of learning hidden underneath this hat. I got her all the hard way, every bump, bruise, and fall. Now, some of it was easy, but then most weren't fun at all. But the one thing I always got from every job I ever done was to do the best I could each day and try to make it fun. Now, you hired on the cowboy. You think you've got the stuff. You told them you're a good man. Now, the boss has called your bluff. So how's that going to make you look when he comes riding through and he asks me who it was that dug those holes, and I say it was you? Well, we could let her go like this, take the easy route, but doing things the easy way ain't what it's all about. The boss expects a job well done from every man he's hired. Oh, he'll let you slide by once or twice, then one day you'll get fired. For if you're not proud of what you do, you won't amount to much. You'll bounce around from job to job, just slightly out of touch. Come morning, let's rig those holes and get this fence in line. You'll be saving 2 jobs, those being yours and mine. Then one day you'll come riding through and you'll look across this land and you'll see a fence that's laid out straight and know you've had a hand in something that's withstood the years. And then proud and free from guilt, you'll smile and you'll say, hey boys, there's the fence that me and Shorty built. Great story, great poem.
I love it. It is so. I love. By the way, I love cowboy poetry. And Terry said, "Do you have any CDs or from that you sell or anything?"
Yeah, well, yes, I've got CDs.
Oh, yes. I'll take. I'll have those on the way home because she said, "Don't come home without them if you have them."
Yeah, I've got them.
So we will. Yeah, I absolutely have them. So. It's really cool. She said, "You got books? You take books because she'll read them to me."
I don't have books.
We'll drive along, and she will sit on her side of the RV, and she'll just sit and read cowboy poetry till we run out. Yeah. And we went through several different stores, and then we went through libraries, and so sort of ran out a few years ago on cowboy poetry. We should start over because. What I found is took 3 years and I forgot them.
Yes, well, not only that, but you'll find new books in the stores probably.
Yeah.
So yeah. I am not a cowboy poetry writer, Roland. I am a reciter. There are 2 types of individuals that do what I do. There's the writer who recites, and some writers never recite because they just don't feel comfortable reciting. And then you've got the reciter who is probably more adept at reciting the cowboy poetry than sometimes the writer because they're more dramatic. They may use more moves. I've got some poems that if I've got a stage I'm working on, I'm all over the stage because you're putting the dramatics into it. And I use a lot of humorous cowboy poetry because that's what people like to hear. They do like to hear serious poetry. I've got another poem, not exactly a cowboy poem, but it's a very serious poem. Will bring tears to people's eyes when they sit and listen, and I've got to be very careful because I don't look over them. I see people tearing up.
And you start tearing, it's real hard to continue with it. So, I totally understand.
It's a tough thing to do. And yet I find that people love that kind of poetry, but I always come back with the very next one that lifts them back up again and gives them something to be happy about, and to laugh about.
I'll tell you what, I have a wonderful story, cowboy story, and you've never written a cowboy poet, okay?
No.
So what we're going to do is our challenge for the next year is to take my story, and between the two of us, we'll create a Rich and Roland, okay?
Well,
We'll create a Rich and Roland cowboy poem. How does that sound for a challenge? And I have written poetry, so we're not going without it being there. But I have never felt the context of it like you would need for a person that read it. So you and I will sit, and I will start to come up with some like the words, and then you can help me make it sound dramatic and say, man, if we put this in there, how's that sound for a fun challenge just between the two of us? It
sounds like a challenge that I'm going to have a hard time to turn down. You know, the poetry that I use now, I change words around because I don't like the way the writer wrote it, and it's not coming out quite right, and it's not emphasizing the way that I would like to emphasize. So I will rewrite some of that poetry. Some I've written an entire verse or two on.
So what we will do is we will plan on being here next year, or wherever we meet.
Could be in Minnesota.
Could be in Minnesota, yeah. And we will, to the cameras, okay, have you read our cowboy poem.
Well, now that's going to be an interesting challenge.
Okay, before we leave, I'll tell you the story that we will create in the poetry. It's a cool. Okay, so we're going to end this now, and we'll see ourselves on OMM Stories. So give a little goodbye to her.
Well, I want to thank you, Roland, for giving me the opportunity to appear on Old Men Stories. It's a privilege, and it's an honor, and I think you're doing a wonderful job to let people create and tell their story, their life story. All of us have a life story. I told you, just shared with you just a very, very little bit of mine. But my goodness, we could go on for hours talking about things that happened when we grew up. You don't think about that. Most people say, well, I don't have a story to tell, but that's really not true. Everybody's got a story.
Everyone. Basically, I always say it's infinite. It's infinite. The stories, because as you're telling the story, you're creating the story.
Yes, absolutely. And
so
the stories never end.
That's right. It never ends. Yeah. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to the next.
See you then.